Welcome to the Contemporary Business Leader presentation. My name is Luke Thurmond. I'm a student at Grand Canyon University's Colangelo College of Business. This is for Professor Williams, due on November 23rd, 2025, and my leader is K. Bruce Thurmond, PhD, or Dr. Thurmond. This is the interview link with Dr. Thurmond. Feel free to watch the video and attach any questions or reach out to me if you have any questions.
Three.
So for the business leader description, the interviewee is Dr. Thurmond. He went to Murray State for 4 years. He got his undergraduate in chemistry. He then attended Washington University of St. Louis, where he got his doctorate in polymer chemistry. He currently works for Edwards Life Sciences in Irvine, California. He's the senior director of polymers, coatings, and biomaterials. He's been there for 2.5 years, and he's been in the medical device industry for over 25, as well as the healthcare industry for some of that as well. He's done medical devices and healthcare in both the United States and Canada. He has extensive business, people, and product management across decades, multiple countries, and companies. Specifically, he was 13 years at Becton Dickinson outside Chicago, 6 years at Angiotech in Vancouver, British Columbia, and then between 6.5 and 7 years at Monsanto and Partners in St. Louis, Missouri. When talking about his greatest career achievement, we can talk about ChloroPrep, which is what he had explained in the interview. So it is a sterilization process that goes on after someone who's going into surgery has been sedated. It's placed on the skin in order to kill off all the bacteria before entrance wounds are made in order to go in for both minimal and non-invasive surgeries. It was patented in July of 2015, and it's patent number 9,078,934. In April of 2019, the official product was released to the general public, where multiple different healthcare agencies were able to use it. He really spoke on how he utilized grit and resilience when talking about his greatest career achievement. By using these, he was able to kind of define the issues that came up, and he was able to work through some of the studies that may not have worked or some of the tests that had failed. And obviously, no one wants to fail, no one wants to experience failure, but when you do, how are you going to respond to that? And that was kind of the biggest thing he brought up to me, especially in the interview. And to quote him specifically, at the end of the day, it helps someone on the other side of the supply chain. Meaning somebody's going to have to use this product in one way or another, whether that's a surgeon making sure someone is taken care of before surgery, or it's someone who's being operated on, having that confidence to know that they aren't going to have some sort of bacterial infection seep in because of the product that he helped make. When looking at the chart, he totaled up to around 43, and he's got multiple, he had multiple different options. So moving on to the challenges, challenges arise at every level. So he got a 42 on this specific chart. He was most often using kind of the communications and factors the same he did previous when he's talking about his greatest career achievement. He gave me an understanding that research and development is not out of the project or out of the picture when it comes to having challenges. If anything, you have more of those than you may sometimes directly in the business world, but you're able to kind of work through that via tests and data. That was his biggest point, was talking about the data and how the data, as you work through it, you can work through these critical issues, you can work through these critical problems to where the issues don't arise nearly as heavily, but they are easily changed if there is an impact, for example. He was able to complete trademarks throughout his project. It's now a trademarked item like ChloroPrep, So handling these challenges, you're able to still work through it, and the light is at the other end of the tunnel as he's now able to explain this and talk about some of his greatest career achievements. When it talks about leadership, he was able to delegate these tasks to the people who were in the role with him, how he was able to explain it to them, how he was able to have them help him work through his problems and work through the issues that he was having, maybe at a governance level, where the FDA didn't love what they were doing. He was able to work through it with them and bring up different issues to some of his teammates and some of the people who worked for him. They were able to work through these issues and create a better understanding of how to handle these challenges, how to push through them. They refined their approach, they worked steadily, and they were able to complete this effort in right around 7 to 9 years, which sounds like a lot, but when you're thinking about something that's going into surgery every day, I'd rather go on the long side to make sure it works. We talk about power bases specifically. We talked a lot about how he leaned more towards fostering commitment rather than producing compliance. And he really wanted to talk about expert and referent, just because having a PhD means you're an expert in something. Doesn't mean you're an expert in everything, but it's an expert in something. It's just anywhere from a 6 to an 8-year degree. So you definitely have studied what you're doing a lot. By using that, he was able to bring that into the fold and really talk about how he was able to use that grit and resiliency to foster the commitment from his team. It fosters reliability. That was stated by a different professor back in 2020. And when you're looking at that, you're able to understand that the teammates feel more comfortable. They're not necessarily working towards a reward or something specific, but rather working towards the goal because it satisfies them, it fulfills a need for them, but they also know that their boss can complete this role because he has that background knowledge. And because of this, clients at the end of the day are going to feel more comfortable with it, whether that's surgeons or those going into surgery. You have an understanding that the people making it are able to work through it and they have an expertise in this specifically. When talking about Becton Dickinson, which is where he spent the most time and where he talked a lot about the products that he was able to create and the products he was able to fulfill, their mission and vision statements, mission being advance the world of health, and vision being we envision a world where our solutions advance healthcare and improve worker and patient safety. That sounds pretty spot on for a medical device company. Being able to work through something to create safer and more innovative ways to keep people alive, simply. So doing that builds a lot of perseverance and builds a lot of comfort within the company, because at the end of the day, you're helping someone. And when we talk about kind of their organizational strategy, it was to simplify, empower, and serve as their true north. So when you're thinking about those three things and those three trigger words, you understand they're building you up. They're trying to make sure that the people who are on the other end, the consumers from this company, are taken care of at a polarizing level. And if you're being led towards that true north, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of room for error when it comes to different ethical conundrums. You're going straight forward or you're out. And I think that's a very good thing to have when we're thinking about a medical device standpoint, because it's critical. You know exactly where you need to be, and you know that there's a level of influence that kind of builds you through each job and each role. So doing this really helped him when he talked specifically about ChloraPrep. Talking about leadership applications, he utilized task-oriented behavior. He wanted to make sure that the people working under him, as well as hearing from him about communication, they had tasks that they were able to complete to help complete these patents, to help complete the tests, to help complete studies that build these patents forward and build up their group. It's a smaller group. It's a research and development team. They're building things for the future. They're pushing the needle when it comes to innovation. So making sure you have structures and a role that everybody needs to follow to complete a task was very beneficial in his mind. And that was kind of what he had explained to me, that you have structure, but you're also able to have communication where it doesn't feel forced, it doesn't feel required, but at the same time, everybody kind of knows their role and it's drawn out really simply. He also made sure to include the point about servant leadership, which we had talked about outside the interview. He made a point that being a Christian has helped him build up his teammates, build up the people who work for him, so that they feel as though they're being respected, not just from him, but on a deeper level, to where they're not dragged down by management. They have the ability to be creative. They have the ability to work through what they're searching for. But ultimately, when they complete the task at the end of the day, they're doing it partially on their terms as well. So it's not a forced drag you into the fight sort of ideal, which I think is very beneficial, especially when it comes to research, because it can be so straightforward a lot of the time. When talking about leadership style comparisons, Dr. Thurmond's a big hockey fan. So John Cooper, if you're familiar with hockey, he's won 2 or 3 Stanley Cups in the last 10 years. He has an ability to win. And I think Dr. Thurmond really kind of can consider himself similar to that. He wants to win. He wants to compete. He wants to find a way to do it no matter what. And he'll drag anybody into it that he needs to, but he'll find a way to do it well, and he'll do it the right way. So when talking about task-oriented style, you drag that communication piece into it, and you have a really strong base for how to work with employees, to give them specific roles, for everyone to know their role. When you're talking about the hockey side of it, every player's got a role, from the goalies to the forwards to the centers to the defensemen. Everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody knows their role. When you start doing that, you stack up small wins. When you stack up big wins, you have a chance to win a Stanley Cup, which is obviously the end goal. For Dr. Thurmond, it's simply producing a product that's going to be beneficial to the medical device world, and it's going to save lives. So by doing those two things, I think that these two, being task-oriented and having that good level of communication, I think they're very similar. From leadership lessons, his big one that he instilled in me was grit and determination. So being able to reload after you experience a failure, or push forward when you don't necessarily know where you're going, but you know the end goal. That's something that will kind of drag you into it. He really made an emphasis, and he's always told this to me and my little brother, about hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Famous hockey coach quote from Herb Brooks. Being able to do that was very important. And then he also really emphasized on communication. Because of this communication, you're able to work through with teammates, you're able to work through and take away that negative backlash that you can sometimes get if you're not communicative. If you just give somebody a role and don't really explain it, that can be an issue. And the last explanation was, don't stick all your eggs in one basket. Make sure you know what you're doing if something fails. Have a backup plan, have a second backup plan, and be able to work through it with your teammates together. Finally, when talking about the interview and research review, the interviewee, I had already explained, he knows a lot. He's been in this role for a long time, and he's managed people. So it was a really cool experience to get to know how to do something like this from a medical device perspective. It was a lot of eloquent words. It was a lot of eloquent conversation, so I really appreciated that. And he was able to provide a lot of detail for me in the long run. And finally, I talked to him on a regular basis, so that made it very easy. This is the references. Have a nice night.